Now, from Wayne 15, Indiana's hidden history, honoring the celebration of Black History Month. Here's your host, Terra Brantley.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. This month, Wayne 15 is joining the nation in recognizing Black History Month. It's a time to not only celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans, but diversity and community service as well. This year, Fort Wayne City Council is making history with its most racially diverse council ever. And for the first time in franchise history, the Fort Wayne Mad Ants sponsored a Black History essay contest. The winners receiving prizes for writing about inspirational local African Americans and the need to wipe out racism.
I plan to maintain a lifelong goal of calling out racism and bigotry of all types in order to make my school and my community a safer environment. I also plan to raise awareness about racial bias and other minority issues.
Tonight we're going to go beyond writing about history makers and instead show you how they impacted Northeast Indiana. You'll learn about a Broadway entertainer who inspired entertainers of all races with his Fort Wayne Talent Factory. You'll also hear about the city's first minority-owned and operated urban contemporary radio station. And my partner Dirk Rowley will join us from the Fort Wayne History Center to revisit a Hall of Fame tribute. So join us for the next half hour as we hear from history makers who at one time or another called Fort Wayne home. We'll journey through part of Allen County's hidden history in celebration of Indiana's. The journey begins after the break.
Indiana's hidden history is brought to you by the Cuesta Education Foundation. Indiana's hidden history continues. Now here's your host, Terra Brantley.
Here on the grounds of Lindenwood Cemetery in Fort Wayne, you'll find one of the city's most visited grave sites. It's not one of a former mayor or founding father, but an African prince who inspired a local university to develop its worldwide mission.
This is the Samuel Morse Statue Garden. It was dedicated about 25 years ago in 1995, and it commemorates the life of Samuel Morse, one of our most beloved and storied Taylor University students.
So storied, there are books about him. And Taylor University made a movie about Morris decades ago. Angel in Ebony tells Morris's start as Prince Kabu 130 years ago in Liberia. He escaped torture and journeyed to America to study the Bible.
He was this African prince who had this great desire to learn about the Holy Spirit, and that desire then led him from his native town of Liberia to the United States, to New York City, and eventually to Taylor University.
Jim Geringer works at Taylor. He says when Morris attended the university, it was located in Fort Wayne. Missionaries paid for his tuition. After being ministered to, he began sharing his story and ministering to others. Morris got sick and died at the age of 20, but the seed he planted had taken root.
What his Taylor friends then wanted to do was they wanted to carry that mission back to Liberia and back to the rest of Africa. And so from that became a very missions focus, an international focus. I mean, those elements still exist today.
The mission work led to programs to help students in many countries, including Liberia, where there is now a Samuel Morse Scholars Program.
I started with this first stage when he was a captive.
In the late 1980s, artist Ken Redan was contacted to start work on a memorial in Morris's honor.
So I called this moment of truth when he first realized he mattered. There's a higher power.
Redan researched and decided to create several pieces to illustrate the sunrise and sunset of Morris's spiritual journey.
All three together then give the background for his arrival and his effect as a student. But as I look back, this will always remain as one of my very favorite endeavors because I learned so much through the process myself.
In Fort Wayne at Lindenwood Cemetery, you'll find Morris's gravesite in Section 14. Here it's among grave sites of other Africans who made Fort Wayne home. Cemetery officials say Morris's is one of the most visited. It and the statues in Upland and a Taylor Residence Hall stand in lasting tribute to the man known as the Angel in Ebony.
Samuel Morse to me represents what can happen in a person's life if they completely, totally yield it to God without any thought whatsoever as to what the consequences might be.
Another man would leave a different kind of footprint in Northeast Indiana, and it involved shoes that sounded something like this. We'll tap into Fort Wayne's talent factory and the man behind it when Indiana's Hidden History continues.
Indiana's Hidden History is brought to you by the Cuesta Education Foundation. Indiana's Hidden History continues. Now here's your host, Terra Brantley.
Tap dancing, an art form brought to the big screen and Broadway by Bill Bojangles Robinson, later made famous in Hollywood by Fred Astaire. A Fort Wayne man had his own style of tap dancing, and after performing with entertainment greats in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, decided to shine up the fort with his own brand of soft shoe. Fort Wayne, June 2004. An 80-year-old Albert Bernard Stiles decided to show off his soft shoe during a public access television show recorded at the Allen County Public Library with roving reader host Condra Ridley.
What made you get into tap dancing?
I can always remember Mr. Stiles as being a person who was full of enthusiasm, optimism, and energy.
And I never took no lessons.
Stiles called himself a self-taught song and dance man. Raised in Tampa, Florida, he got his start in showbiz when he and his friend decided to take a train without their parents' knowledge to New York City to be on a CBS radio show.
She found out that we was on our way to New York. She was mad.
Stiles was 11 years old, his pal Nathaniel 9.
Major Edward Bowes and his original amateur hour.
And I remember Major Bowes came on CBS. I was looking up, and I looked up top of the building, and I saw that CBS sign. I knew we was hot then.
So hot, they got on the show, won a talent contest, and went on to perform at the World's Fair in New York City, the Apollo Theater, and Canada, with such greats as Josephine Baker, Duke Ellington, and Ella Fitzgerald.
He was just all over the place, tap dancing and singing.
Stiles lost his partner during the war. Since he was stationed outside of Fort Wayne, he decided to settle in the city, get married, raise a family, and open what he called the world's best shoe shine. Still, song and dance was in his blood, so he started Fort Wayne's Talent Factory.
20-some years we worked together.
James Lindsay was his partner.
We established a black theater in Fort Wayne that it didn't have, which I was a part of. We initially went in with the Talent Factory, and the next year we had a play. Each year since then.
Stiles Shoe Shine and Talent Factory was located here in what is now an empty lot at 1804 East Wayne Street. It closed up shop about 20 years ago, but long before it did, Stiles inspired others to follow in his footsteps.
I really respected him highly. I mean, I honored the man.
One of those is Unity Performing Arts Director Marshall White.
He told me, he said, "Marshall, what you're doing is what I dreamed to do for years, is to pull up and create a platform for kids of color to exercise their talents and develop their skills." He applauded what I was doing, and he basically gave me his blessing.
He got people jobs. He helped get people off of drugs. It was a multifaceted individual.
I've always been the type of person, if I wanted to do something, first I had to make up my mind to do it.
Stiles died in 2014. What he did and who he impacted as an entertaining trailblazer with his own style of fancy footwork lives on in Indiana's history and more. Just when Stiles' Talent Factory was hitting its peak, a local radio talent was emerging who would bring a whole new vibe to Fort Wayne radio. How he foxed up the fort when Indiana's Hidden History continues.
Indiana's Hidden History is brought to you by the Cuesta Education Foundation. Indiana's Hidden History continues. Now here's your host, Terra Brantley.
He's an African-American radio pioneer who is now retired and living in Georgia, but he made his mark in Fort Wayne. Tonight, we reveal the hidden history of the man who owned and operated the first urban contemporary radio station in Northeast Indiana.
Today's hottest music.
Today's hottest music.
Hot 1079.
Hot 1079. Yeah.
It's touted as one of the hottest radio stations in Fort Wayne. But Hot 1079 wasn't always Hot 1079. The numbers used to be synonymous with Fort Wayne's first urban contemporary radio station. It had the same call letters, but instead of being hot, it was Foxy.
Foxy 107.9, Summit City Soul.
And longtime radio personality B.J. Steele was part of it.
Isn't that real love from Jody Watley as B.J. Steele? I need you bad. When he gave me the job as program director, he said, it's yours now, don't screw it up. I go, okay. And he let us know that it was going to be done this way. It's Louis' way. Or no way.
Steele is referring to the man who started WJFX Foxy 107.9 from the ground up, Louis Dinwiddie.
And I never could understand why we didn't have a minority radio station in Fort Wayne.
Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1935, Dinwiddie grew up in Fort Wayne. He helped lead Central Catholic High School to a state football championship in 1950 and later spent 4 years in the Air Force.
When I got home from the service, it was kind of rough, which was in 1956. Fort Wayne was, school was still segregated to a point.
He spent years trying to find himself. He worked in a steel mill, sold insurance, and even ran a clothing store. But he found his niche through an ad in the classifieds.
And so they had this ad in there, it's classified. It said that own your own radio station without an FCC license. And so I said, what the heck? I sent him the $5. And he sent me these 3 little manuals. And one of the articles in the manual was talking about cable radio. And I went out to the cable company and convinced the owner of the cable company that I was an expert on cable radio.
Even though he wasn't, Dinwiddie worked with a few investors to set up a cable radio station in the 1980s. In 1990, he made the jump to FM.
I went from cable radio to FM radio. A license became available. It was opened up to minorities in the late 80s and early 90s. And so I applied with no money.
But local advertisers helped the station make money. WJFX Foxy 107.9 broadcast local urban programming that catered to African Americans. For a decade, Dinwiddie made local headlines, spinning records and CDs. Then in 1999, he sold the station.
God is good. He found a way for me to make it work. WJFX 107.9. Kept it there for 10 years.
Dinwiddie is long retired now, living in Georgia. In fact, he did this interview at WJBF, Wayne 15's sister station in Augusta. His radio days are long behind him now, but his contributions did pave the way for national recognition.
I was just inducted into the National Black Broadcasters Hall of Fame in October in Atlanta, which was a recognition for me being the first black cable radio station in the United States. I'm proud of that.
Dinwiddie is also on the History Makers website. The station he started is now Top 40 and owned by Adams Radio Group, which operates 7 stations in Fort Wayne, one of which is R&B.
And I truly hope that I have helped somebody, along the way.
Dinwiddie also inspired me. I met him soon after I arrived in Fort Wayne in 1993, and he told me, Terra, invest in your community, and your community will invest in you. Turns out, he was right. Coming up, how that investing led to the Hall of Fame.
Indiana's Hidden History is brought to you by the Cuesta Education Foundation. Indiana's Hidden History, brought to you by the Cuesta Education Foundation, continues. Now to wrap up tonight's program, here's your host, Terra Brantley.
You know, it's not often we get to see ourselves as history makers, but a year ago, I humbly accepted that distinction. And here to share that is my evening news partner, Dirk Rowley.
Good evening. Less than a year ago, the History Center revealed some of Terra's hidden history in a display that was set up right along this corridor. It honored her more than 3 decades of career dedication and community service. Terra is one of the longest-serving news anchors in Indiana and the longest-serving African-American news anchor in this state. Last April, Terra took the podium in Indianapolis to thank her colleagues from around the state for inducting her into the Indiana Associated Press Hall of Fame. We close tonight's program with that Hall of Fame video.
My life, in one word, has been incredible. When I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, I never thought that one day I would be reporting from outside the Coliseum in Rome and be nominated for an Emmy after covering a local choir's performance at, of all places, the Vatican. Nor did I ever think that I would actually visit a homeless camp and share the stories of people who literally live on the streets. Being able to come into people's homes and touch their lives with information to change their lives has been a gift. It is something I do not take for granted. It is something I do not take lightly. I did not get into journalism for personal gain, but to try and give people news they can use to make their lives better, to make their lives more informed. And you don't do that just by sitting behind an anchor desk. You do that by truly diving whole hog into your community, helping raise money for different causes like Riley Children's Hospital by dancing in a benefit, Reason to Dance, Reason for Hope, or dancing and also judging Fort Wayne's Dancing with the Stars event to raise money for the Carriage House that helps adults with mental illness lead productive lives, or leading walks and rallies that help the homeless or victims and survivors of domestic violence, because I myself can relate to them having survived domestic violence, and as a survivor and a mom, helped my children secure full academic scholarships to Purdue University, all while working as a team to revamp our lives with my second husband, my children's stepfather, who has helped in our growth and has been a phenomenal addition to our team, our family. Life has had its struggles, but in the middle of the struggles, in the middle of the challenges, there lies a tremendous opportunity. The opportunity to help people get free smoke detectors after my house caught fire and was destroyed. The opportunity to create a PSA about the importance of wearing your seatbelt after I was in a car crash with a distracted driver and my car was totaled, but I came out without a scratch. The opportunity to help a local organization revamp its leadership and remain viable so it can continue to serve our community. I thank our community for embracing me all these years and allowing me to help out in any way I can, big way, small way, any way. My job, my career extends far beyond the news desk. I truly hope that I have been and can continue to be a servant leader who is all about giving back to my community without fanfare. I don't have to have a camera rolling for me to volunteer or participate in an activity or event. I do it because I like to. I do it because I care. I do it because it makes me feel good, and it's all about giving back. Being inducted into the Indiana Associated Press Hall of Fame, I was like, wow! Wow! I actually shed tears. I'm like, oh my gosh. It was like God saying, job well done, good and faithful servant. I am truly, truly honored. Thank you.